Quantification of epistemic certainty, for hypothesis verification. Summary. We describe how to quantify epistemic certainty for epistemological verification of a hypothesis. We illustrate the method, by applying it to the Big Bang, and to God, as a rational abductive inference. Introduction. 1. Pascalian certainty is a level of certainty that is high enough for you to bet your life on it. Pascal's wager. E.g., you have Pascalian certainty that the universe exists, even though you cannot prove that it does. And, you have Pascalian certainty that the car driving down the road towards you is real, even though you cannot prove that it is not an illusion. And so, you bet your life, when you decide to wait for it to pass by before you cross the road. That is what Pascalian certainty is. You bet your life based on that level of certainty, even though it is not 100% certainty. We can have that same kind of certainty that God exists, high enough to commit our lives to that truth. 2. God is an abductive rational inference to the best explanation. This provides Pascalian certainty, in the 99% range, as discussed below. 3. How do we quantify that certainty? See below. 4. Epistemology. A. In epistemology, we come to the truth of a hypothesis, by verification of the hypothesis, and by falsification of the converse of the hypothesis. We discuss verification in this video. We have discussed falsification of the converse in other videos. B. In science, we establish the existence of an unseen entity by using a two-dimensional matrix epistemology. One epistemological dimension is the number of one kind of observations that are consistent with the hypothesis that the given entity exists. The other epistemological dimension is the number of different kinds of observations that are consistent with the hypothesis that the entity exists. C. The more observations of one kind that are consistent with the prediction of the hypothesis, the more that increases the epistemic probability that that kind of observation is correct. The uncertainty in that observation drops as 1 over the square root of the number of observations. D. The more different kinds of observations that are consistent with the prediction of the hypothesis, the more that confirms the epistemic probability of the given hypothesis being right. E. Example. Electrons, protons, positrons have never been directly observed. However, we have many different observations and different kinds of observations that are consistent with the hypothesis that electrons, protons, positrons actually exist, in some sense. So, this is an example of this two-dimensional matrix epistemology. F. Example. The Big Bang cannot be directly observed. However, we have 4 kinds of observations that point to its being true. 1. The galactic redshift increases as a function of distance from the Earth. 2. The cosmic microwave background radiation. 3. The amount of hydrogen and helium in the universe. 4. Distant stars and galaxies look younger than nearby stars and galaxies. G. Similarly, we have many different observations, and several kinds of observations, that point to God, by being consistent with the hypothesis that God exists, and by contradicting the expectations of metaphysical atheism. 5. Epistemic quantification. A. Big Bang example. We have 4 kinds of observations that are consistent with the Big Bang. The epistemic probability of each kind of prediction being right by random chance, independent of the hypothesis, is 50%. The epistemic probability that a hypothesis is right is 100% minus the cumulative probability of its predictions being right by random chance. So, the epistemic probability that the Big Bang is right is determined by 100% minus the cumulative probability of the 4 kinds of observations being right by random chance, independent of the hypothesis. That works out to 100% minus 50% to the power of 4, which is 94%. So, the epistemic probability of the Big Bang being right is 94%. B. The more the different kinds of observations that confirm the hypothesis, the greater the epistemic probability that the hypothesis is correct. 4. Application. A. God is a rational concept. There is no internal contradiction in the concept of God. B. Each time there is an observation that is consistent with the existence of God, and that contradicts the expectations of metaphysical atheism, we count that as evidence for God. And we assign each such kind of observation a 50% epistemic probability of being right, independent of the existence of God. C. In other videos, we have listed 30 different kinds of observations about reality that point to God, in the sense of being consistent with the hypothesis that God exists, and contradicting the natural expectations of metaphysical atheism. D. Epistemic estimate. We have 30 kinds of observations that are consistent with the hypothesis that God exists. The epistemic probability of each kind of prediction being right, by random chance, independent of the God hypothesis, is 50%. So, the epistemic probability that the God hypothesis is right, is determined by 100%, minus the cumulative probability of the 30 kinds of observations being right by random chance, independent of the hypothesis. That works out to 100% minus 50% to the power of 30, which is 100% minus 0.00000001. So, the epistemic probability that God exists is 99.9999999%. So, the level of Pascalian certainty that God exists is more than 99%. Conclusion. 1. We provided a method to quantify epistemic certainty for epistemological verification of a hypothesis. We illustrated the method by applying it to the Big Bang and to God as an abductive rational inference. 2. The Big Bang has an epistemic certainty of 94%. 3. God, as a rational abductive inference, has an epistemic certainty of 99.99%. 4. This is a level of certainty that is more than enough for any rational person to commit his or her life to the truth that God exists. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.